Welcome back to the Holistic Selling Podcast. I'm pleased to welcome Gerald Poncet today. Gerald is one of the four co-founders of a European company called Pangea Summit, which specializes in leveraging AI to turbocharge your go-to-market success by creating hyper-personalized messaging that will drive the engagement of your target prospects and significantly improve your lead generation and sales conversion rates. A white paper from X-Force Management called Embedding AI into Your B2B Sales Engine recently stated that for go-to-market teams, AI presents the opportunity to boost efficiency and productivity, ultimately driving increased bookings and revenue. The question that white paper raised was, how do you leverage AI to advance your core revenue objectives in a tangible way? Well, you are in the right place today to get an answer to that question. We will talk about how AI can help your company create hyper-personalized messaging that will help you connect with your prospects and customers, which will turn into higher conversion rates and ultimately higher revenues. Gerald and I have known each other for over 10 years now. So thank you so much for joining me today. Please take a minute to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Bernard. Great to be here. Great to have you in front of me remotely, unfortunately, but great to participate in your podcast. So I spent most of my career working with large global technology vendors and systems integrators, industry strategy, and industry go-to-market. We worked together in this capacity a few years back, right? So working very closely with the field, very closely with go-to-market teams, and helping sellers across geographies with things like messaging, verticalization, if you will, to grow the company footprint. My background is more specifically in consumer industries, i.e. retail and consumer goods, as well as hospitality. And as you mentioned, I'm one of the four co-founders of this French-German company we call Pangea Summit, which indeed focuses on helping technology organizations, for the most part, but not exclusively, transform their go-to-market using AI. That's in a nutshell.
Yeah, fantastic. As a reminder, just to put things in context, holistic selling is a revenue acceleration system that is built on orchestrating all company processes and functions to enable the frontline team members to deliver extraordinary experiences and outcomes to customers and prospects at every touch point. One of the main points of friction, however, is the inability of sales reps and account managers to get prospects and customers to engage. Marketing automation tools have generated countless emails and messages to their target audiences every day, which makes it very difficult to differentiate. So, Gerald, why is AI personalization so important today to create that differentiation?
First of all, technology companies are selling very complex, most often than not, horizontal solutions into highly specific industry contexts. That's what we did at Oracle and at other industry vendors. And that's particularly true when it comes to the need to, in fact, adapt the messaging and the positioning with specific industries that you're messaging to, right? And a trend that is more recent, especially with AI and more specifically with Gen AI, is that this new technology has dramatically lowered the cost of producing content and producing campaigns. And the numbers reflect that. AI for sales and marketing is projected to grow to more than 240 billions over the next few years, growing at a double-digit speed a year. And that's massive wave of investment towards that technology. But at the same time, as you kind of alluded to, many CMOs and heads of go-to-market say AI is reshaping how they operate, especially in B2B. So while AI is improving efficiency, it is less clear whether it's improving commercial impact. So for example, outbound conversion today in many B2B contexts still sit below the 2% threshold. That's one dimension. And I would argue that it's more of a relevance issue than a productivity issue. And personalization is not particularly or only about inserting a name in an email. It's about really how do you align the commercial reason why a buyer should care right now. And AI makes that personalization scalable, but it does not automatically make it meaningful or even accurate for that matter, if you think of things like hallucinations. So there, and I will maybe complete on that or land on that part, but there's no shortages of tool today. MarTech is incredibly crowded space right now, as we always both know. Most organizations really have powerful technology, things like AI, automation, analytics, but the ability to execute is no longer the main constraint. The harder question really is, have we clearly identified or defined rather what actually deserves to be scaled? How do you deliver messaging that resonates not only with a specific persona, but with a specific stakeholder, specific individual in their context, in their role at that specific moment in time?
We'll definitely expand on that in a minute, but what strikes me in the emergence of AI and the fact that it's now become ubiquitous is that as AI takes over and let's call them machines, start automating more and more of the processes a company runs, especially customer-facing processes, what is going to become more and more critical is the human touch, the human connection that will differentiate one company from another. I recently wrote an article on LinkedIn about the power of the human connection. What is your point of view on the increased need for that human connection in the world of increased AI investment?
I think it's a fundamental question and one that can be answered by saying that humans, at least that's our philosophy and that's how we are structuring the platform, which is called Pangea GTM. We're structuring around H to H, human to human. So it's really about how humans stay in control and stay at the center while AI helps them to become more efficient and do it at scale and to concentrate on developing these relationships as opposed to crafting messages at scale that may not necessarily meet their constituents where they live.
I think it's a great point. You pointed to relevance earlier. And I think that's really key. So every company is investing in some sort of AI messaging. But the key is how do you increase the relevance of that AI message to trigger a response, an engagement from your target prospect and get them on a phone call and start a conversation with them. You pointed that out already, but relevance and how AI personalization would increase the relevance in the context of a human connection, I think is going to be really important. Now, we see a lot of technology companies today claim to offer some sort of AI personalization, but not all solutions are born equal. I've tested some myself that seem to scratch the surface. They deliver a personalized message, but it's 1 inch deep. It's not yet totally contextual, personalized, and relevant. So let's talk about Pangea Summit and how is your solution different? What do you do specifically to enable a higher degree of personalization, which means a higher degree of contextual relevance, which then obviously triggers a higher degree of engagement from your target prospects or the target prospects of your customers?
Thanks for asking, Bernard. Well, what we built with Pangea GTM, which is the platform Pangea developed, is essentially what we call an industry, or what you can think of as an market intelligence layer, which connects strategy with execution. So it powers, or it can power, depending on the situation, outbound messaging. But the key difference is that it starts upstream. We start by structuring the commercial situation using things like digital knowledge twins, for example, and sales plays. So that logic of structuring commercial situations or commercial engagement or philosophy paradigms, if you will, exists in the form of sales plays, which, as you know, it represents a specific commercial situation you intentionally pursue. So if I take an industry that's close to my heart, retail, if you, instead of targeting retail broadly, you might focus on a specific account where signals show things like rising e-commerce return rates, right? The trigger is clear and the outcome you're addressing is clear. Platform allowing us to structure these scenarios and activate them consistently across hundreds and thousands of accounts. From there, AI can generate messaging at scale because you have a message that is grounded in context, if that makes sense.
It does. Now, in terms of creating a truly personalized message to a target audience, you're looking at several filters that message goes through to truly deliver that level of hyper personalization. Can you talk more about what those filters are that you get the messaging through to end up with the best of the best personalized outcome?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Because, let me take a step back and just comment on the fact that most AI models today are trained on public corpus, something, on the open internet. And they are very good at language, but they don't automatically understand the commercial context of a specific company situation. And they tend to hallucinate, which is something that we are preventing in our platform, where content also goes through different lenses, if you will, including one that focuses specifically on compliance, which to make sure that the content that gets generated actually follows different standards of compliance, whether it's internal compliance, yeah, looking at on brand, are we following the guidelines of ethics, as well as following external guidelines when it comes to industry regulations. If you think about us here in Europe, following things like GDPR or things like AI Act. So this is an important dimension, the compliance dimension. But to go back to your question, yes, we have realized that being able to go through a number of steps of content generation is very helpful to enhance the accuracy level and efficiency and the relevancy of the content that ultimately gets created. And that relevancy starts with focusing on the industry lens, so focusing on developing content that is specifically addressing retail. In my example, we could equally do the same thing to address other industries, so that industry dimension is very important. It is equally important to understand who it is that you are speaking to or targeting. So understanding things like the psychographic profile of an individual that you're targeting, because you know that this person has that kind of experience and career profile, as well as specifically published information about their company, their situation, their topics of interest. That helps you connect the dots, and that helps you connect the dots with another lens that we are bringing together, which is the commercial, the sales play that you're positioning, that you envision exploring with your target audience. So if you put these together, this helps drive content that is indeed more relevant than just swapping a name for another when you engage with your audience. And you do that across different formats: emails, white papers, avatars, social posts. You can think of it that way.
Yeah, I love the fact that you combine those multiple filters or layers in driving the personalization of the messaging. As you pointed out, the industry layer is number one, then the layer of the sales plays, then the psychographics of your target audience, which is pretty deep because you really want to understand how that person you're targeting likes to communicate. What is their style in terms of communication? Because you want to address them in ways that they will respond, that will map to their own communication style. And then the compliance layer and making sure that your messaging is compliant with company guidelines. You mentioned your digital twinning a second ago. So how do you go about absorbing and onboarding all that data into a private LLM that allows you to drive the degree of relevance of the message at the end of the process?
Again, this is a very important dimension, and to maybe indicate that we are not creating a new LLM. We work with various LLMs. There are Western LLMs or LLMs from other regions of the world, including here in France. I'm not going to mention them all, but we work with at least 5 or 6 different LLMs at any given point in time, and we've also benchmark these different LLMs for their ability to provide and to produce content at different steps, at different the journey of content generation, if you will. So yeah, the dimension to keep in mind is that we are also infrastructure agnostic, and that we build a platform that is in fact around specific borders, where we are in fact reasoning with content that has been pre-vetted, as opposed to content that is potentially not relevant or potentially is negatively impacting the message that ends up being created.
So you're able to take external data that's relevant to that personalization and internal data sources like sales plays and compliance rules, etc., to drive to that level of personalization. And it's bigger than a bread box. It requires a deep technology foundation to be able to bring all those data sources together, create that digital twin. You can use any technology, in terms of the back end and the front end, but ultimately the power comes into aggregating all those data sources together so that you can write personalized message and do so at scale across a large number of target personas within the context of, for example, a marketing campaign, right?
Yes, absolutely. And another important dimension is that you could do that at scale, but also you can decide where you want to place the cursor in terms of automating that process and the level of interaction that you want to have with that process. So you can think of orchestrating campaigns where you are preparing content that ends up being, let's say, orchestrated in a way that allows you to pace yourself as you engage with your audience and engage with that specific audience across a number of channels surrounding campaigns with different types of content. You can start with a LinkedIn request. You could follow up with an industry point of view. You could eventually move on to reacting to a post that this person has actually published, which resonates with where you are in terms of interaction with that prospect, and maybe coming up with some differentiating positioning that speaks to this priority investment that your stakeholder has actually surfaced for you. So you could orchestrate that conversation using our tool and also automating it so that you could become more efficient as a seller.
Absolutely. So, what have you seen in terms of outcomes? What are the outcomes that a company using Pangea GTM can expect to achieve based on the early customers that you've acquired and working with?
Well, as you alluded to earlier, at the end of the day, it's all about driving business outcomes. So, of course, it's about improving marketing efficiency, but it is equally true of at the end of the day, it's about top line and bottom line. So, are you contributing to developing the business? Are you contributing to increasing the win rates, accelerating sales cycles, lowering cost per opportunity? When we typically engage with an audience and explain how we position Pangea GTM, we take that image of a funnel, and you're very familiar with that image. When you start an outbound messaging, you start with thousands of cold messages in many cases. If you're at the end of the day, at the end of this funnel, you end up potentially with one lead, if you're one win if you're lucky. And in between the different steps you have from suspect to prospect, the MQL and SQL, and there's a lot of deep addition in the funnel. Well, a lot of the work that we do with the tool is to help organizations actually become more efficient in winning a bigger chunk of that funnel. And where we differentiate with the rest of the tools that are out there is that we focus on the why. Why should a particular customer stakeholder care as you reach out to them? So many tools, I mentioned it before, many tools focus on execution, identifying who to speak to and sending the messaging out. We focus more on the rational structure of messaging that actually should govern your messaging as you connect with your audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. What strikes me the most is something that I've personally experienced for many, many years is the fact that the lead generation process is highly ineffective and that you have an enormous amount of leakage in conversion rates from suspect to prospect to MQL to SQL to creating opportunities, let alone the conversion of an opportunity to a deal. The biggest problem is the early connection with the potential prospect. And the fact that, again, since marketing automation tools have come into massive use by everybody, we're all getting tons of cold emails from a lot of different sources. And let's face it, the vast majority of them we delete right away. So the key is, how do we capture the attention of a prospect in the early stages of a relationship by telling them something they don't know in the context of their business in a style that resonates with them personally and individually. That is the promise of AI personalization. And again, not all tools are born equal. And I think you have developed a solution that can fulfill that promise.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, we developed the platform. We've tested the platform across various industries and geographies this past 8 months now, and we are actively engaging with the market in Europe, across key regions in Europe, starting with Germany and France, where the full founders are originally from, but also with other regions in Europe and also with North America. So we think there's a strong appetite, there's strong opportunity. The challenge, if I need to maybe mention one, is really to educate, in quotes, the market in terms of the value that we bring, the differentiated value that we bring against other players, where we don't necessarily mean to or envision to replace the stack or to completely modify the stack, but rather to amplify the technology that our customers have spent time and invested heavily in implementing and in adopting and in driving outcomes. So that's our key challenge today. So really educating the industry, and I'm also very grateful for this opportunity today, Bernard, because this is it contributes to addressing that challenge in a way.
I agree. And I like what you said about amplifying, not replacing. Let's face it, every B2B company is already using a number of marketing technology tools to determine who they should go after or where that potential target buyer is in his or her buying journey. They're using a lot of tools to approach those customers through campaigns. So they can address the who, they can address the where, they can address the how to reach those potential buyers. What I think they're lacking is why would that prospect really be compelled to engage with the message that they're getting? And I think that's the void that Pangea Summit is filling, is creating messages that are so personalized and contextual that they clarify for the target audience, why should I click on that message? Why should I engage with that particular company? Would you agree?
Absolutely. And again, it goes beyond just emails. You've seen some of the format that we generate, which goes way deeper than an email, in a very structured and visually pleasing or graphical message, if you will,
Yeah.
which are not only relevant, but they're very timely. I give you an example. If you reach out to a retail CMO and you happen to have identified the fact that that retail CMO participated in a recent conference where he or she presented a number of key focus areas that their company is currently focusing on, maybe in a panel discussion with other peers, then you are able to pick on that and show your audience that not only you understood the point that they're bringing across, and connecting that message with your agenda. You're actually making it relevant. As a target,
Nope.
you want to read something, and you want to feel like you are being heard, that you matter, that the time that you're about to invest in that discussion actually is promising, that the odds are that it would be worth your time.
Totally agree. So to summarize the conversation for the audience, AI personalization is here to stay. If you have not tried it yet, you should definitely invest in it because it is going to be critical for you to reach the hearts and minds of your target audience. That's number one. Number two is not all AI personalization tools are born equal. A lot of them are just scratching the surface. And so it's really important to engage with companies in the AI personalization field that have truly specialized in creating a deeper set of filters that truly create contextual personalized messaging for your target audience. Filters such as the ones Pangea Summit is using, such as using industry, sales play, psychographics, and compliance filters to come out with a truly differentiated compliant message on the back end. And third is this will generate results, especially on the top end of the funnel when you're trying to connect with your audience. You're trying to get them into a conversation with your brand. You need that level of highly contextual and personalized messaging to get them to the table. That's absolutely critical. And the promise is obviously that they will be able to improve their conversion rates from stage to stage. They'll be able to generate more opportunities, more revenue, and accelerate their sales cycles in the process. So it's definitely a technology worth investing in to enable your frontline team members to deliver extraordinary experiences and outcomes to your customers and prospects at every stage. Now, Gerald, I'd like to turn it back to you for the final word, which is your call to action. What is your call to action for the audience today? What would you like them to take back from the podcast?
Thank you for asking, Bernard. But if I may, let me ask you one question, maybe for the benefit of the audience, if you're okay with that.
Sure, but don't forget, I'd love to hear your leave behind, your call to action as well.
I did not forget your question. We'll get back to you. So Bernard, from your experience advising revenue leaders, where would you say you see the biggest blind spot to the earlier conversation where organizations introduce AI into commercial teams, in your experience?
Well, I think the biggest blind spot is, again, how AI needs to create connections with your target prospects. I think it has a massive promise that if you use AI properly based on the right data, internal, external data, and you can bring all that data together to create contextual, relevant, personalized messaging, make it all about the prospect, make it all about the customer. It's always about them, not about you. And you create a dialogue that's focused on them and their success. They will definitely be encouraged to engage with your brand. And so I think that's where AI can have a massive impact in the success of commercial operations.
Great. Thank you. If I may now go back to your question about, takeaways. Before I do that, first of all, again, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciated how you framed the discussion. So yes, we are in a moment where AI investment, particularly in sales and marketing, is accelerating rapidly, with leaders increasingly being asked a hard question of how the technology is translating into real commercial impact. So if there is one takeaway from my side, it is that while AI makes scaling easier than ever, scaling only creates advantage when the commercial reasoning behind it is clear. So as organizations invest in AI for go-to-market, I would strongly encourage them to look upstream at their sales plays and look at the logic feeding outbound messaging before they start accelerating it. And Bernard, maybe there's probably a deeper session that we could do unpacking some of that, how that translates into practical execution. So that could be an interesting follow-up. But thanks again for the conversation now.
Absolutely, Gerald. Thank you so much for your contribution today. Thanks to the Leave Behind for the audience. And so with this, I will conclude the podcast episode for today. Look for more esteemed guests joining the podcast in the weeks to come. So thanks, Gerald, once again for your contribution today.
Thank you, Bernard.